Hello, my name is Mason Rico, and today we'll be going over people with motor disabilities. So first, we have to define a motor disability. The CDC defines a disability as any condition of the mind or body that makes it more difficult for the person with the condition to do certain activities and interact with the world around them. So CDC kind of breaks up the term disability into three different dimensions: impairment, activity limitation, and then participant restriction. So an impairment is going to be the like anything affecting the body's structure and function, and then of course the mental function as well in that person. Activity limitation is kind of based on that impairment previously stated, but think of it more as like the senses required for the physical activity. And then participant restrictions are going to be more of like the societal participation. So think of like a person in a wheelchair doesn't have access to a certain building because there are stairs. So that would be a example of a participant restriction. So now that we know what a disability is, putting the word motor in front of it basically just means that a motor disability is going to be any disability that affects a person's function, structure, mental function, um, societal participation, and then like any senses, but with the focus of more like locomotion and then the need to be able to move with the device of something else. So like this dog in the video, and in this video will have has a motor disability because it cannot use its back legs. So it obviously is more challenging to locomote by itself, which is why it requires the use of that cute little wheelchair that it has. So the first kind of motor disability that we're going to go over is a spinal cord injury. The thing about a spinal cord injury is that it's more of an result of an acute accident, not necessarily a certain gene or just a lifestyle choice. So there's not really a specific age that a spinal cord injury can affect, but obviously people who are older, who have less sense of balance and weaker like spine, have like a weaker spine, are of course going to be more susceptible to receiving more severe spinal cord injuries that would affect their extremities. And so Roop et al. Basically explains that a spinal cord injury is when there's damage to a vertebrae that causes the loss in motor and sensory function. And we can kind of determine the severity of a spinal cord injury based off of two tests through the sensory and motor functions of the body, because obviously the spinal cord goes through the spine, and then the vertebrae kind of are those segments that protect that spinal cord. And so if there's a vertebrae that is damaged, there will be obviously a reflection of that in the area in like the area that the spinal cord branches off into to innervate specific body parts. So like for example, C5 and C6 vertebrae are damaged, which are going to be your last cervical portion of your spine, then you're going to lose loss in your biceps function. And so on a scale from 1 to 3, we can test the sensory, the sensations that your bicep can feel. And basically 1 is that you have full sensation, you can feel light touches. And then 3 is like complete loss of any sensation. And then the motor function is going to be on a scale of 1 to 6. So 1 is obviously you have full control over your bicep. You're able to bend your arm with ease or without the assistance of another person, while 6 will be like complete loss of function. And so depending on which part of your body is affected, you or which part of your vertebrae gets affected from like an acute accident, you're going to have different um, parts of your body being affected. So there's kind of like two main categories that a spinal cord injury really falls into. You have tetraplegia, which is the complete loss of all motor function in your extremities. The word tetra means four, so that means that you have the loss of like arms, legs, and that basically limits almost all kind of ADLs you're going to require on a lot of people for assistance. And then paraplegia is just the you keep your upper body, you're able to have full like motor control over that, but you're all going to lose your ability to walk and use your legs and lower extremities. So this little graph shows here, and like I said, really any part of your body can get affected by a spinal cord injury. It just really depends on what part of your spine gets damaged. Oop, don't want to skip that. This is Andy's story, and while a spinal cord injury can be severe and then you can lose a lot of like function in your body, there's still an opportunity through surgery and rehabilitation that you can regain your control and your motor independence so that you can do like your ADLs. In this story, Andy is pretty active. He's 59 and there's no real health risk for him there, but he had an accident, broke a couple broke his back, and then he was bound to a wheelchair, complete tetraplegia. But through multiple like clinics and just rehabilitation practices, he was able to regain his like motor function throughout his body, and he was able to actually walk his daughter down the aisle for her marriage. So there's still like an opportunity to regain some lost motor function. Um, on the opposite side, you have ALS, which is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and that's just a progressive neurological disease that involves the brain and spinal cord, mainly the brain. For symptoms, ALS is kind of like split into multiple parts. So you have like the lower motor neuron, that's going to be your like motor units, the actual site of the muscle, and then your upper motor neuron upper motor neurons, which are going to be more in the brain, and think of like your frontotemporal region, like your motor cortex and all that stuff. You also have progressive bulbar palsy, and that's going to be more the medulla oblongata that's affected and kind of like your basic survival needs. You'll slowly lose function of that. And so the most common symptoms of like ALS early on is going to be like that asymmetric focal weakness, cramps and spasms, and your like affected arm, and then obviously degeneration of parts of the brain. And so there is not really an age range that's going to be affected, mostly upper adults, but you can get it earlier in your life as well. It really depends on like your certain genetic factors because ALS is a genetic disorder. So the specific gene that and Sadiq was able to like kind of confirm in their studies was that the C9 or F72 gene is going to be your most commonly affected gene, and then that risk is just going to keep going up based on how many family members you have that have ALS in the past. And then obviously for Sandra's story, ALS is a degenerative disease. So she started off as a dance teacher and then gradually she lost her motor function in her like lower legs and then her arms and then complete loss of motor function. And now she requires the use of someone else to like help her around with everything. In this video, she is expressing her art, but she cannot like control her lower body. So she requires the use of her assistants to like help her move around. And that is complete loss of motor function um, in this kind of disability. It's so like unlike the spinal cord injury, ALS is going to be progressive. It's going to happen over a long period of time. It's not going to be like instantaneous, um, like a spinal cord injury, but you won't be able to like regain that same motor function and motor independence. And so you will have to, as the disease like progresses on, you will have to rely more and more on other people around you for basic ADLs and locomotion like that. So that is the end of my presentation. I tried to get my camera to work, but sadly, I don't know what was up with it today. It just did not want to work for me. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.